Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode. We're going to be talking about elemental attunement today, or whatever you might want to call it. There's actually already elemental attunement in D&D, if you guys didn't already know. It's from the elemental monk, but nobody likes him, so we're stealing it.
At the very least, elemental attunement could definitely be fleshed out more, right? So,
100%.
we're going to do that. Also, before we get too far into this, we have merchandise now, so we'll have a link for that in the description. But no need to linger. There's just some really dope shirts you should definitely check out. That's all.
Basically, whatever an elemental attunement would be is like fire, earth, water, air, getting really in deep and in touch with your fire element. Let's just say you got like one of the elements like close to you and you start having like the Aang tattoos from the last Airbender, or like your rage builds up and like they start to glow, or anything like that that can kind of add some flavor to an elemental build. And you could even think of like Genasis or flavor them in some way. And a lot of Genasis aren't like doubled down on their elements, and this could be a way to do so.
Absolutely. I always feel like I want to make some sort of Genasi, and I can't really flesh it out as far as the character fantasy is supposed to be for a Genasi anyway.
Right.
So this would definitely be an awesome way to dive into how to do that with some homebrew ideas. But we did all the thinking for you, so let's get right into this thing. Like anything as far as homebrew ideas go, you're going to want to do what you can to make sure this thing stays balanced if you do take some of these ideas. So work with your DM closely. You're going to have to if you're going to go as far into this as we're thinking you could, because we're talking about maybe like inventing or reflavoring new spells and things like that. So work with your DM on it, and then your DM knows the appropriate encounters to give you or not give you to make your character actually balanced for the game or campaign that you're playing. So some of the things you might want to do that with is just like maybe introducing some flaws with some of the buffs that you get from these cool elements. We'll give some examples for each element as we go, so you know what we're talking about.
So that brings us to our first element, fire. What could you do to be attuned to the fire element other than maybe making a pilgrimage to the Temple of Fire? It could be just simple worships of the plane of fire. Some of the bonuses you might be able to gain from attuning to the element of fire could be like, obviously, fire resistance or taking to its very extreme fire immunity. But be careful with immunity, because that can be really dangerous in your games. A lot of the things with being attuned to fire is really going to be like, think of the Avatar. What is a firebender and what are they able to pull off with all of their different kinds of fire utility? It could be as simple as, just giving them a fire cantrip and resistance to fire. But let's just say you had a couple more ways to flavor it, to like adding abilities to what they have for their character, or adding it to their racial abilities as well.
On top of that, you could actually just reflavor some other cantrips that are popular to whatever the player thinks they could do awesome stuff with fire instead. So, like maybe Frostbite. The cantrip Frostbite, you attack. If the person you're attacking fails to save, then they have disadvantage on their next weapon attack. Maybe make that more of like they have a burn effect on them and they actually can't use the arm they need for attacking anymore, or at least for the next turn, something like that. Taking the same spell, maybe just making it fire damage instead. All manner of reflavoring, and you can do that with tons of stuff, not just Frostbite, of course. So possibly if it's a character that might be grappling with the enemy, maybe once an enemy's grappled, they have this ability that's like an extra attack on top of that actually like hugs them with fire damage. And they just like imbue them with heat and burn them from there.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so you can do whatever you want with this kind of stuff. And again, as long as you're working with your DM, just to find different ways to keep it balanced. So the whole fire resistance thing or fire immunity, you could turn that to also like a vulnerability to cold related damage. Whatever it takes to balance things out.
I'm envisioning like a fire punch, or you got your sword. You're like holding it like a baseball bat and it starts just glowing red.
You got lightsabers now. On the other side of the elemental spectrum from fire, of course, there's water. Some of the awesome perks you could have if you find a way to attune to this element of water, like actual water breathing, any type of like walking on water, or even like maybe fast movement and like surfing on water, And of course, to balance that out, you could be vulnerable to especially dry areas, or maybe even vulnerable to fire damage or something like that as well.
Another thing about water attunement, or maybe even water dependency, and that's actually in D&D as well. It gets to be really harsh, especially if you look at the low casts. They gotta do it every 4 hours, but it could be something that you could just get exhaustion or not end up getting a rest from not being exposed to water after a certain amount of time. Bonuses you might be able to gain by being attuned to the water element could be a lot of different commanding water spells. Maybe even acid splash is now just a big old splash of water. You could even have some kind of projectile where it'd be like these little water or ice senbons. You know, if anyone's ever seen Haku from Naruto, that could even be a really crazy mirror image that you could try to incorporate into your build later on. But if you really wanted to go all the way into Avatar: The Last Airbender, maybe even your water gives you the ability to heal. It gives you a healing cantrip of some sort. Well, actually, a healing cantrip might be like way too much. So maybe you can heal yourself sometimes.
Right. Or I guess like as close as you can get with the healing cantrip, I guess like Spare the Dying or something.
Yeah.
Give you something like that.
Rolling right into the next element, we've got Earth. Earth is kind of a tricky one. It's not something that you look at in particular and you're like, oh yeah, he's resistant to Earth. You know, like what's that even mean? So obviously you're gonna be maybe a little more resistant to everything. It's kind of like being a rock or a stone, you know? So like this could end up being correlated as to like a +1 to your AC. It could be like a literal resistance to slashing or piercing damage. You get to choose one of the two. It could be any way that you'd like to flavor it. You could even be the gargoyle in your group.
That's awesome. Can you imagine just becoming a gargoyle? Like, that'd be sick. Right. Maybe you could pick a resistance like slashing or piercing specifically or something like that. But on the penalty side of things, maybe you could have a penalty to your initiative or your dexterity if you're getting a buff to your AC or maybe even Constitution, anything to make you a little bit more like rock-ish. Maybe you need to be careful cannonballing into the bathhouse pool later because maybe you can't get out from the bottom after that. You just sink to the bottom and, well, you know what happens. Or maybe they could get a special trait to be able to actually move through the earth easily somehow. Like maybe they can burrow quickly or have like some sort of burrowing spell, or they could have like a phase situation where they can actually like phase through rocks. I know there's the rock giant, I think, or something like that. Kind of has like a rock camouflage ability. You can steal something like that. Or of course, you could just take some of the spells like Thunderclap and make it now this awesome thing where you step on the ground and just like ripple of earth underneath your feet and kind of blows enemies back from there. Makes it like an earthquake spell instead. When we were talking about this, there's some awesome inspiration you could pull from Gaara if you're a Naruto fan and you know Gaara. Like you said, you could just like open a pit in the earth and they fall in and then there they go. Done.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, it might be a little OP, but like if you could do that for finishers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
like you get the how you want to do this. Come on, just sand burial, you know? Following the avatar-like elements of the main elements, going to air directly. If you had this interesting magical communion with air, how are some of the ways it could affect you? First thing we thought of was like some sort of dexterity buff for sure, or maybe even a direct speed increase, or maybe you can give this player the mobile feat, something, you know, basic, simple like that. The idea that they could actually just like float around on their feet and move really quickly. As far as vulnerabilities for this, maybe just have like personal issues. I don't know. You know, we thought about Aang in Avatar, and I feel like his biggest enemy most of the time when he had a big struggle was like himself. I mean, what element? I don't know. We couldn't really think of elements to go against air, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's no direct counters for air. A direct counter for air could be like a lack of air.
Yeah.
Or maybe like fire consuming air, but that's kind of seen more as like air benefiting fire instead of fire being a negative relation. I guess I would see that more as like a positive relationship with air and fire, like air bonusing fire instead of fire negativing air.
Yes.
I said that terribly, but however you got it.
No, negativing. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, that's a word. So obviously a lot of the cool things with air is going to be related to maybe you weigh less, move a little bit faster. You could maybe fly, glide, float in some way. I think even if you don't get yourself like literal flying, it would be really cool to like be able to move your entire movement of float, maybe like a good 5 feet above the ground. So it's like you have that much of a jump, kind of, you know?
Yes, that's cool.
And honestly, if you were going to stick with the theme of like giving them one spell or like a cantrip or something, you could literally reflavor any damage dealing force spell to be an air spell, and it would work perfectly. You almost don't even have to reflavor it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like force, the only thing that isn't magical force that's basically the same thing is like air force, you know, so air force. But yeah, of course, some of the spells you could give, if the level's appropriate or whatever else, is like fly, levitate, catapult, gust, obviously. But maybe the person that's attuned with air could get this free spell or ability that actually like empowers friendlies. Like they empower their attacks, kind of like lessen the air pressure around their blows so that their blades like sink faster through the air and, you know, cool stuff like that. So yeah, and that could just be like the aid spell reflavored technically. Or you could make something new with that. Maybe they just get a bonus to help actions somehow related to air things, something. I don't know.
Could you imagine if they like automatically had sending because like they could whisper on the wind?
Oh, that's sick. Yeah, you can achieve these things. You just gotta be with your DM, you know, figure this stuff out.
So if you liked any of these ideas, please do leave it down in the comments. Or if you have any better ideas than what we've got, please, I want to hear them. Other than that, there are a lot more elements in D&D that we could cover. There's radiance, necrotic, acid, ice, lightning. Probably more than I didn't just think of off the top of my head. But hey, if you guys want to see that, let us know too.
Either way, we might make the video because I feel like that could be really fun. We can even go into like the relations between those elements and these main ones. Maybe they're all like sprawling branches of these elements or something.
True. Like what if air was like the first step to becoming attuned to radiance?
Yes. So for those of you that stuck around, thank you so much. Please do like and leave any comments as far as more ideas on this kind of topic or other ideas you want us to homebrew and flesh out for you so you don't have to think as hard or something. Feel free. That stuff's fun. Like, comment, and subscribe, of course. And we'll see you in the next video.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.